Netanyahu is worse than Maduro, and we're not overthrowing him. So the whole conversation is absurd.
There's no imminent attack here. Donald Trump had all the time in the world to go to Congress and get permission for this, and he just didn't want to.
Dave Smith and Kyle Kulinski on the Piers Morgan Show discussing recent events in Venezuela. Kyle makes some great points, bringing up the Epstein files and also suggesting that Netanyahu is by far worse than Maduro. Yet one gets away scot-free whilst the other gets kidnapped. And Dave makes some great points that it was never about drugs or weapon charges. It's been about the oil all along. Let's take a look.
I mean, if you look at what Israel's done in Gaza, I would say they've trampled over international law with utter impunity, and they don't care.
Reasonable minds can differ, but I agree that's a good point on the
no, they can't.
Murkiness of international law.
Yeah, okay, Kyle.
Yeah, well, I mean, I find this whole conversation preposterous because the idea that we're the moral arbiter of anything is honestly laughable. Trump is himself a criminal. He was best friends with Jeffrey Epstein. He's covering for a billionaire pedophile cabal as we speak. We armed and funded a genocide in Gaza. We also armed and funded a genocide committed by Saudi Arabia in Yemen. If there's any country on earth where there's some semblance of a sound argument to do regime change, it's our regime being changed. So I don't want to open the door to this might makes right, law of the jungle nonsense. And everybody else except Dave, seemingly on the panel, is in favor of that. And
America has a mechanism. Carl, hang on. America has a mechanism for regime change. It's called the election every 4 years. And the truth is, Americans had a good, long, hard look at.
You're making my point.
Well, no, I'm not.
This is my point.
I'm not.
Yes, you are.
I'm saying you live in a free democratic society with free democratic elections. That's why Trump won in 2016. That's why he lost in 2020, whatever he wants people to think. And that's why he won again in 2024. That is regime change, how it should happen.
We back 73% of the world's dictatorships. The idea that we say, here's the dictator we don't like, we're going to overthrow them, is ridiculous. By any objective standard, Netanyahu is worse than Maduro, and we're not overthrowing him. So the whole conversation is absurd. We're in no position to be the world police or the moral arbiters. In fact, Trump himself literally says, this is about the oil. It's about the natural resources. It's about stealing that for the corporations and the billionaires. So the whole conversation about
I think it could be. I actually think I think Venezuela can be about a number of things at the same time. That's why I think nuance is an important factor in these things. It can be.
But that's the cover story.
Hang on, Kyle. Can it just be pointed out?
It can be about oil. It can be about oil. It can be about Maduro being a gangster. It can be about a number of things.
This was
Trump's a gangster.
To us.
Trump's a gangster.
All right.
Kyle immediately makes an excellent point. Who is the US to make judgment on what is moral or not when the leader is somehow engrossed with the worst pedo to have ever existed? If found guilty, that would make him worse than any crime Maduro could have ever committed. Regime changes over the last few decades. We've seen Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan. Now we're seeing it with Venezuela and possibly Iran, all funded and instigated by the US. Kyle suggests it's the US that needs a regime change. Piers makes the point that we have the power through elections every 4 years, but Piers is missing the point here. It doesn't mean that the president for 4 years can do as he wishes, and it's him who's causing the majority of the problems around the world right now, and it's him who needs to go, is what Kyle is suggesting.
Isn't it funny that we have this whole conversation, and while you're saying it could be about all these things, you know what no one's bringing up? Drugs. And that's what it was sold to us as. Right. Just like all these other wars, they just lie through their teeth. It has nothing to do with the drug problem, or a tiny fraction of it, and nothing to do with the fentanyl problem, which is the real crisis. It's a total pretext for war. And I got to say, man, by the way, I kind of agree with Michael on the concept of international law. But the thing about it is that this is totally illegal by our own law, by the Constitution of the United States of America, which every politician puts their hand on a Bible and swears before all of us to God that they will do everything in their power to defend and execute. There was no imminent attack here. Donald Trump had all the time in the world to go to Congress and get permission for this, and he just didn't want to. And if you want to just say, by the way, Mike, it's funny because you point out I'm a libertarian or Kyle's a leftist. Ironically, we're the only ones taking the conservative position here on this. We are not an empire.
So?
Actually, the Supreme, yes, that's actually right. There's a long tradition. Do you know your history on this, Michael?
There's a long tradition of libertarians telling conservatives what we believe. And I'm sick of it for one.
No. There's a long tradition of the best conservatives having the exact same foreign policy I do, and then a bunch of former communists who were atheists convinced you guys that it was right-wing to support wars everywhere. By the way, the Monroe Doctrine...
They convinced Thomas Jefferson in 1801. I don't know about that.
No, I'm not talking about the Barbary Wars. Okay, anyway. Anyway,
or the Monroe administration or the Roosevelt administration.
Dude, do you even know what the Monroe Doctrine is? You say the Monroe Doctrine means that we get to run our hemisphere? No, it doesn't.
No,
the Monroe Doctrine.
We keep our
Michael, let me finish a thought, and then you can respond to it. No, that's not actually true. It meant that Europe couldn't have any more colonies here, and in turn, we wouldn't interfere in Europe. By the way, it's not a law. It's something a president said once in a speech, and it hasn't been the cornerstone of our foreign. It hasn't been. We haven't. Have we not interfered in Europe? Have we not interfered in Europe for over 200 years? Is that what you're telling me, Michael?
And then we became the world empire.
That's true. Right, exactly. So we abandoned the Monroe Doctrine. We never followed it at all. And the Monroe Doctrine never said, they said that Europe couldn't establish more colonies. They already had several, that they couldn't establish more colonies. It didn't say that if there's a country that does a mineral deal with a country somewhere else because we won't allow our companies to do it with them, that therefore we can topple the leader. This is completely illegal by our own Constitution.
I'm happy to explain this. It's true. In 1823, the Soviet Union did not yet exist, and other adversaries around the world did not yet exist. We have expanded the notion that European powers, which were a threat to us, should not interfere in the Western Hemisphere to those other adversaries as well, who you recognize are adversaries. It seems to me where the big difference here on the panel is that you, Dave, at least will acknowledge that America has interests and there are bad regimes. You're making some crazy claims that the Constitution doesn't allow the United States to be commander-in-chief of the army. You're making a crazy claim that Congress.
No, I'm not. I'm saying it doesn't allow them to declare a war.
You're making a crazy claim that it was. Excuse me. You're making a crazy claim that it was somehow illegal to follow a court order from 2020 to take out Maduro and arrest him. Anyway, you're making all sorts of crazy.
Is that
claims,
how we do foreign policy by court order?
Hold on one second, guys. 1 second. I'm happy to. The difference here is, Dave, you at least acknowledge America has interests, and you're saying because we sometimes make mistakes. Hold on 1 second. I'm just trying to get my point out. Because we sometimes make mistakes, you're saying that we should not pursue those interests, or you're saying that the consequences could be worse. The point that Kyle is making is actually different from yours. Kyle's point is that America has interests, and we should oppose those interests because he thinks that America is the great Satan or something.
I'm actually making an argument. Thank you for the straw man. I'm actually making an argument in favor of law and order and intelligence in foreign policy.
Hang on a second, Kyle.
Thank you very much.
Dave and Kyle are right. This has been about two things: money and distraction. Distraction from the Epstein files. And money, the US has officially started selling Venezuelan oil. It has just completed its first sale, according to CNN Business, worth $500 million, with additional sales expected in the coming days and weeks. What's even more worrying and shows the outright corruption of this man, according to The Independent, the proceeds of this sale will be divided into multiple accounts, with the majority of it being held in the Gulf state as opposed to US banks. Senator Elizabeth Warren said there is no basis in law for a president to set up offshore accounts that he controls so that he can sell assets seized by the American military. Trump is a loony, and as Kyle suggested, if we're talking about regime changes, the US needs to have a good look in the mirror first. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Support me by liking and subscribing, and I'll see you all on the next video. Peace out.